Hello! In this video, I will tell you about the strangest mummies found in history. First is the 2,100-year-old mummy known as Lady Dai. In the year 1971, in the city of Changsha, Hunan Province, China. At that time, workers were busy digging a bomb shelter when suddenly their shovel struck something extremely hard and solid. It turned out that what they had just encountered was the tomb of Lady Xinjue, also known by the title Lady Dai, a noblewoman who lived around the year 213 before Christ during the Western Han dynasty. She was the wife of Li Kang, a high-ranking official of the Changsha state at that time. When archaeologists proceeded to open the fourth coffin lid, nestled inside three other large coffins, an unbelievable sight appeared before their eyes. Amidst the light red water, wrapped in 20 layers of precious silk, was her body, which was about 50 years old at that time. Although she had passed away in the year 168 before Christ, meaning she had been underground for more than 2,100 years, the body still looked as if she had passed away only a few hours ago. The skin of Lady Dai still retained an amazing moisture and elasticity, and even when pressed with a hand, the flesh still moved in a strange way. Eyelashes, eyebrows, hair, and even the tiny nose hairs were still intact. Doctors were astonished to find that they could still obtain clear fingerprints from her fingertips. More miraculously, when conducting an autopsy on December 14, 1972, the medical community discovered that the veins still contained Group A blood, and all the internal organs were incredibly intact. The cause of death was determined to be a heart attack. Through an internal examination, they found 130 watermelon seeds still inside her stomach and intestines, showing that the lady had passed away only 2 to 3 hours after enjoying this fruit on a summer afternoon. However, Lady Dai was not as healthy as her noble appearance suggested. She suffered from many diseases, such as gallstones, high cholesterol, atherosclerosis, liver disease, and even a worm infection. Injuries to her lower spine also caused her to move with a cane during her final years. So why could her body be preserved so incredibly well? First, her coffin was placed 12 meters deep underground, surrounded by a massive layer of activated charcoal to absorb moisture. Next was a thick layer of clay to prevent any air from entering. Finally, there was the mysterious red liquid with a slight acidity containing traces of magnesium, which created a completely sterile and oxygen-free environment. This is an ancient secret art that modern scientists today still cannot accurately recreate completely. This mummy is currently preserved at the Hunan Provincial Museum. To ensure that she can live forever with time, in the year 2003, scientists took a bold step by injecting a special compound into her still functional venous system to ensure long-term preservation. This is the best preserved mummy in human history, far surpassing the famous mummies of Egypt. The Mummy of the Hanged Man. Everything began on May 8, 1950, in the remote Bjelskovdal bog area of Denmark. The two Højgaard brothers were busy digging peat for fuel when suddenly the face of a man emerged from the ground. Terrified because they believed they had just encountered the victim of a recent murder, they immediately called the police. However, after arriving at the scene to investigate, the authorities did not open a criminal investigation, but instead immediately called an archaeologist. The reason was that this bog area had previously seen the discovery of similar bodies in the years 1927 and 1938. Carbon dating results confirmed that this man was not a modern victim, but that he had been sleeping in the bog since approximately the year 400 before Christ, in meaning the body had existed for more than 2,400 years. When he was brought up from the ground, the Tollen man was in a nearly naked state, except for a leather animal skin cap, a leather belt, and a rope knotted tightly around his neck. An autopsy showed that a bowl of porridge made from various seeds and wild grasses was his last meal, consumed about 12 to 24 hours before death arrived. Scientists confirmed the cause of death was hanging. Although the rope was tightened so strongly that it left a deep mark on the neck, the strange thing was that his cervical vertebrae remained intact, a detail rarely seen in typical hanging cases. Experts believed that this was not the execution of a criminal, but rather a ritual of human sacrifice to the gods. There are many clues leading to this conclusion, such as the body being placed in the fetal position with extreme care. Instead of being cremated according to the popular custom of that time, he was taken down into the bog, which ancient people believed was a gateway to communicate with supernatural forces. Even more special His eyes and mouth had been gently closed by someone after death, a gesture full of respect for a sacrificial offering. However, due to the limitations of preservation technology at that time, the body of the Tolland man suffered serious damage. Today, the real head of the Tolland man is currently on display at the Silkeborg Museum in Denmark. As for the body that you see, it is actually a restoration from the year 1987. Some parts, such as internal organs or the thumb of the mummy, were once lost across many museums, and it took a large-scale search in the 1980s to be able to recover them. The 5,300-year-old ice mummy with an arrow still embedded in his shoulder. The story begins on September 19, 1991, when a German couple named Helmut and Erika Simon were trekking in the Alps along the border between Austria and Italy at an altitude of 3,210 meters. They accidentally saw a dark object protruding from the ice and initially thought it was simply the corpse of an unfortunate modern mountain climber. However, because the initial excavation process by the authorities was quite manual, they accidentally caused some damage to the body. It was only when he was brought to the morgue in Innsbruck that experts realized with shock that this was a mummy from the Bronze Age, around 3,300 before Christ, and meaning it was more than 5,300 years old. He was named Otzi, after the nearby Otzdal Valley. Excavating deeper underneath, it was discovered that Otzi carried a sophisticated survival kit, including a copper axe, a flint knife, a bow and arrows, along with animal skin clothing and shoes. Yet, when conducting X-rays and computed tomography scans, scientists discovered a horrifying truth. An arrow was still deeply embedded in the left shoulder of Otzi, and he had also suffered a powerful blow to the back of his head. The consequence of these wounds was severe blood loss leading to death. On his hand, there was also a defensive wound, evidence of a life and death struggle that took place just before he collapsed. More chillingly, and blood traces from at least 4 other people were found on the clothing and weapons of Otzi, raising the hypothesis that he had killed enemies with his own bow and arrows before being assassinated from behind. This is the oldest murder case in human history that we have ever known. Through deoxyribonucleic acid decoding, scientists determined that Otzi had type O blood, suffered from Lyme disease, and had a high risk of cardiovascular disease. Interestingly, his ancestors were more closely related to ancient Anatolian farmers than to the native European populations of the same period. Today, Otzi is strictly preserved at the South Tyrol Museum of Archaeology in Italy. This is the most thoroughly studied mummy, with hundreds of scientific works having been published. Yet a dark spiritual veil still surrounds Otzi, as several people involved in excavating his body have died suddenly and mysteriously, creating the haunting legend of the Otzi curse. The Llullaillaco children mummies. The story begins in the year 1999, when explorer Johann Reinhard and his associates conducted a survey at the summit of the Llullaillaco volcano at an altitude of 6,739 meters. At the place considered the highest volcano in the world, containing archaeological remains, they excavated a burial pit 1.5 meters deep beneath the ground. Inside were the bodies of 3 Inca children. A 13-year-old teenage girl called La Doncella, along with a girl and a boy who were only about 4 to 5 years old. The mummies of these 3 children were so perfectly preserved that they looked as if they had only just passed away. This is also one of the most perfectly preserved mummies in human history, but far surpassing any mummification techniques of the Egyptians. However, behind the mystery of the mummification technology is a cover for a chilling sacrifice process. According to research in the year 2013 conducted on the hair strands of La Doncella, the bitter truth was exposed. During the 1.5 years before being sacrificed, the 3 children were forced to consume a large amount of chicha, which is a fermented corn beer mixture, and chew coca leaves regularly. The concentration of cocaine found in the hair of the 13-year-old girl reached the highest level ever recorded in Andean remains. Even more frighteningly, in the final weeks, the amount of alcohol intake surged to paralyze the natural shivering reflex of the body, causing them to die from hypothermia more quickly. When she was found, audio coca leaf was still stuck between the teeth and the cheek of the girl. Scientists determined that this was the Capacocha ritual, a sacrifice ceremony of the Inca Empire aimed at appeasing the mountain gods after they conquered new lands. Although in Inca society, being chosen as a sacrificial object was a great honor for the family of the child, in reality, cocaine and alcohol played the role of a type of mental chain. This is also the first evidence confirming that the chilling records of the Spanish about this ritual were real. The Zeleniy Yar Mummy. The story begins in the year 1997 at Zeleniy Yar, a remote land in Siberia, located just 18 miles from the Arctic Circle. Here, Russian archaeologists accidentally discovered a mysterious medieval cemetery. The excavations took place in two arduous stages, from the year 1999 to 2002, and were then suspended due to protests from local residents who believed this interference was disturbing the spirits of their ancestors. It was not until the year 2013 that the excavation work was resumed. You can look through these documentary photos. A total of 47 graves from the 12th and 13th centuries have been excavated. But what astonished the scientific community the most was the condition of the mummies. These mummies wore copper masks. They were tightly wrapped in many layers of birch bark and were covered on the outside with thick animal fur from reindeer, otters, or even wild bears. Among them, the most prominent was the body of a red-haired man who was tightly wrapped in copper from his chest down to his feet. Many of the bodies here had their skulls deliberately smashed after death. This was not an accident, but a ritual according to the beliefs of medieval Western Siberian society aimed at preventing spirits from returning to cause harm to the living. Inside the graves, people also found rare Persian bronze vessels, which were produced from a place 6,000 kilometers away. Currently, these copper faces remain at the Shemanovsky Museum in Samarkand, carrying the mysteries of a distant trade link that science has yet to fully decode. This video ends here. If you like this video, please subscribe to the channel to watch similar videos, and do not hesitate to leave suggestions for ideas you want to see in the comments section.